So welcome back. I just went out and had a nice little dinner at a cafe called Kisaten, which also means cafe in Japanese. It's right next to Ala Moana, and it's definitely for people a little bit younger than me, but I think I still pass under the student category. So what are we doing right now? Let me plug my iPhone back in. And so I'm focusing on the iPhone just for the next 3 weeks or so. But pretty soon I think I'm gonna do an Audacity session, which is perfect to do on streaming. And the reason for that is that, well, the main reason for that, oops, it's all open source to begin with. This code, I don't know what parts. This code is probably going to be my code, but I don't mind sharing it. But I'm not sure what the license is going to be. Granted that it's going to be on the iPhone and the iStore. Definitely the educational parts I would like to be able to share with people though. Anyway, continuing on with our coding problems, we just stuck a wall. We have a new class called Effect Entity, and this one doesn't really do anything. Right now it just draws itself in the same fashion as a wall. And that's great, because we definitely need to do that. But if we look at our picture, it's not that bad. I better save this one so I can open a new picture. Okay. We implemented this, the effect entity, but there's no input and no output yet. So essentially we created the superclass. We didn't call it voicer effect. But that's okay. We have a subclass too, and now we have to fill it out. We have to somehow have a way to pass audio into it and audio out, pull audio out of it. So let me take a drink of water while I think about that. Multitasking. All right. So what we have here is a simple constructor and draw method, and that's it. But we also need the way to pull the audio in, and we can do it. No, we already do this pulling of audio in a different class. We do it twice. We do it in the the input manager, and that is a slightly different case where we push the audio into it. In general, it's probably easier to push the audio into it. Yeah. So what I would say is we can have a class called, and for now we're not going to worry about the picture. We turned the color from blue to red to differentiate from the wall, but we're not going to worry about graphics right now. That's for later. Right now we want functionality so we can have something to say ooh about, because no matter how cool it looks, if we're doing an audio app and we don't have interesting sounds coming out, I can't get so excited about it. Okay, so let's look at the header file for effect entity, because I think we can fill it out a bit more. So all effects are going to need this functionality to pull audio from another. And we already said that, and we've already said that an effect will, because they're always going to be entities, we're probably going to do the transfer on the collision event to go back to the drawing board when the voice entity collides with the effect entity. And there will be a function called collide with, and it'll have both objects, and we can just call some function there. Which function do we... And we'll define that function here. First, we'll declare it as... It doesn't need to be return type. We will call it accept so let's call it take input receive no. How about add input? I don't like send and receive because you don't, again, it's that problem, client server, you don't know, depending on which side you're on, it's very ambiguous what the action actually does. But add input makes sense because it applies to the object that's been called on. So it definitely will need some parameters. I'd say the way we did it before was we just passed a pointer to a vector, and that might be sufficient. I'm gonna say yeah, that's good. So let's just do that. We already have a vector here for some reason, and that's fine. You know, the other thing we could do is simply we could take a reference to the voice object. Because let's think about that. There might be a case where we want to queue these sounds up, stack them up, and take one at a time. And if we just use a vector, that's going to be pretty messy, because we're not going to have a clear demarcation of the audio buffers. So the main question is whether we want to allow queuing or not. I'm gonna say no. The other thing that might be cool about that is we can hold on to the object and just spit it out later. Note that there is one more option. We could, instead of entities, we could take sounds, and that's conceptually a bit better. Add input sound. How's that? And it just takes a filter sound. And I like this. This is, I feel, a better design choice. Processing. And the reason this is good is that it already, this vector will now have a demarcation, because The sounds will be what was I about to say? Never mind, just type. Okay. So the filter sound class handles all the buffers and it separates it out into actual sound. Yes. And yeah, we can still reach into it and grab the buffers if we want. But we can also just use the... So filter sounds are meant to be used with the filter audio mixer class, which has something like callbacks. I mean, they look like callbacks. But we can just use those functions. There's no... I mean, there's nothing that says we can't just use these separately. We can't use filter sounds with other classes like the effect entity class. I think we should go ahead and do that. I feel like that's a pretty personal decision, but hey, I'm a person. So we've got a function that does the taking in, and this is going to be a very critical item. But we will also need a function that actually processes things. Now, that being said, we can do everything in an update call, which will routinely be called every time in the update loop. And we can do the processing there if we have something in our queue. So we don't necessarily need an explicit function that we would just stick in there. Yeah, I'm gonna say we can save. But on the other hand, this is a pretty audio intensive part. And another thing is that, yeah, this is hard to think about right now. So it's good to think about it right now in that sense, because we could make some bad design decisions. We want the audio coming out to be played back as soon as possible, because this is now the affected, potentially final product. Yeah, isn't this tricky? Okay. I'm gonna say we don't do things in the update call, but we do them in our own, we do them in a different thread. The sounds in the sound vector shall be independent of, they'll be thread safe, because these buffers are just pointers that won't ever move until we release the reference. So they're thread safe, and it's a pretty good place to call, use a background thread for the processing. And the advantage of all this is we don't have to start it as a multi-threaded thing. What I mean is we can just call this function process sound. And we'll write a comment, process the entire sound.